All right, today, and why is that in the Bible, or why is this in the Bible? We're going to explore the question of circumcision. The word circumcision shows up in the Bible a lot, and it's a kind of an important theme that you'll read in both the Old and New Testaments of the Scriptures. They make reference to circumcision, and so if you know what circumcision is. If you don't, I'll leave that up to you to find. Basically, it's a medical procedure done to men, and anyways, it's in the Bible, and it's actually important. And so we're going to explore that a little bit today. Why is that in the Bible? What's that about? Think about it for a second, just before I give you my answer. Why do you think it's in there? What do you think it's about? So, the answer to the question of why circumcision is in the Bible is because it's representative of a covenant. Now, not always is circumcision representative of a covenant, but in this case it is. So in order to explain that, I need to tell you what a covenant is. When we see this idea of covenant in the Scriptures, in the ancient world, it was the idea of what we might call a contract today, although a little different, but sort of like what we might call a contract today, and that there's an agreement between two parties to do something, that they would both do something for each other. In the case of a covenant, it went a little deeper. The idea of a covenant was that there would be a binding together of two people, not merely in a certain action, but also in an identity. That there would be something that would say, I'm now connected to this person, and they're now connected to me. And so a covenant would be used for many different things, but there would be this idea that, perhaps you would covenant over a piece of land, or you would covenant with your families. And to this day, we even use this term in marriage as a marriage covenant, where two people come together, and they now not only make an agreement to do something together, but they actually decide to identify with one another in some meaningful way. And so in the ancient world, when covenants were established between people, very frequently there would be certain symbols exchanged with regard to this covenant. And so there would be often an exchange of names of some sort of a difference in names that everybody in the public would start to use, and they would recognize that this exchange of names was meant to remind everybody of a covenant between these people, a union of sorts between these people. And so, you think of, for instance, in the modern idea of marriage, the covenant of marriage, we might, exchange. There's an exchange of names there. A last name gets shared or something like this. In the same way, back then, Abram, who the very first covenant of circumcision was given to, this man named Abram, well, his name was changed to Abraham, and you can go to the book of Genesis and read that, of course. And God, well, he became the God of Abraham, and so he actually took on this name of the God of Abraham. And so there was kind of an exchange of names. And, there's often in a covenant, there would be an exchange of some sort of property of some sort. And so you get this idea that Abraham was now going to give to God his offspring, and God was going to give those offspring to Abraham and the land, actually, that he said, here's this land. I'm going to give you this land that you're going to settle on. It'll be your land. And so there's this gift of land. And quite often, in the ancient covenants especially, there will be another symbol, and that symbol will be some sort of a physical mark, something to physically, visually, in some way remind the person that they were in a covenant. It could be, there was a variety of things in the ancient world, from a new haircut to tattoo, or to all these different things. And in the case of the Abrahamic covenant, God said the sign, the physical sign of this covenant, is going to be circumcision. And so everybody who's in this covenant, all the males that are going to be in this covenant, the sign will be in circumcision. And so that became the mark. And so right through the Bible, that became a symbol of that covenant. And so when you're reading in the Bible about circumcision, it's referencing that covenant. It's referencing not only the fact that the covenant existed, but it's also referencing the people that were identified as being in that covenant. And then we get to the New Testament, and it references the circumcision, and references it in many ways, and it talks about the need or the lack of a need, rather, for Christians to have circumcision as the mark of Christ's covenant with us, because we have a different covenant that's greater than even that covenant was, And it's different. So there's this whole discussion about circumcision, how you don't need to be part of Abraham's covenant in order to be part of Jesus' covenant. And so that the discussion of circumcision occurs in the New Testament as well, as they debated that out. And so throughout the scriptures, whenever you see this idea of circumcision, that's the significance behind it. And that's why it became a point of contention or a point of serious conversation, because it's all connected to that covenant that God gave to Abraham and the importance of that covenant. And so that's something for you to look at the next time you're studying the Bible and that word pops up. That's why it's there, and that's what it's referring to.